Dual sport bikes, enduro bikes, and now also adventure bikes made in China, a very touchy subject. We see more and more of these brands coming out with off-road capable bikes. Over the years, I've had the chance to ride a lot of them, got my hands on a couple of different bikes, so I have first-hand experience in the performance of these bikes, in the build quality of these bikes, and sort of where their issues are. So in today's video, we're going to take a look and see if some of them are an actual alternative to the bikes that we're used to coming out of Europe or Japan. One of the first things you notice when you look at some of these bikes is that they look very familiar. A lot of them look like a KTM, a Husqvarna, a Honda, so they kind of copy the popular off-road motorcycles out there until you take a closer look and you look at some of the components, you look at the suspension, you look at the engine, and you realize that that obviously looks very different from what you're familiar with. The second thing that really jumps out with these bikes is the price point, right? You pay about half of what you're paying for any of the leading manufacturers, and with that obviously comes the question, okay, this bike looks like a copy of any of the bikes that I'm used to. Looking at some of the components, almost looks like a cheap copy. How does this bike perform? And how does it hold up when I'm actually going off-road riding? And that was one of my main questions when I went over to Asia to ride a lot of these different bikes. One of the Chinese-made bikes that I spent the most time on is the CX brand. Right, it's a brand that's very active in Nepal. They build 250 Enduro and Dual Sport bikes. I rode the bike in all sorts of different terrain. So we spent a total of 10 days over there, rode everything from just basic trails to really rocky, tight single trail sections. So I got a really good idea of how this bike performs in any of these different conditions. When you jump onto one of these bikes, the first thing that you notice is a very familiar feeling from the chassis, right? And in the case of the CX, that is very much a bike that looks like the Honda. Sitting on it, it very much feels like the 250 Honda as well. Suspension definitely on the softer side. I would compare it more to the CRF F range here, so feels more like a trail bike than an enduro bike. But that is obviously something that can be addressed. The components are good enough to where you could upgrade them and get them set up to your liking and bring that closer to and a proper enduro setup. Saying that, the newest range, I haven't ridden the 2022 CX yet. They do have new bikes that just came out, and they do have better components on those. So this obviously is more of their 2019-2020 range back then. The biggest difference you feel on the power output, and obviously riding in Nepal at high altitude, the bike will always feel slower, but even on paper, if you look at the horsepowers and the power that these bikes produce, it's definitely less than any of the popular 250 enduro bikes on the market here. One of the big benefits of producing less power is obviously the reliability. These are not really set up to be race bikes, they're set up to be dual sport bikes and be enjoyed trail riding, be enjoyed riding longer distances, and riding a lot over there 10 days in a row. We didn't have a single engine issue. We do, with the riding school here, also have some of the beginner bikes, the SSRs that are also produced over there, and the same thing there. Engine reliability is not really a big issue on these bikes. Where it does become a little tricky is little things like wheel bearings, swing arm bearings, stuff like that, where the quality definitely suffers, and that's what gives you a little bit of a headache with these bikes, especially once you run them a little bit longer. Stuff that you're used to on your normal Japanese or European bike. Really these days wheel bearings aren't a big issue. It's not something that you really have to keep that much of an eye on. It's these little things where they use cheaper components, where they obviously trying to save some money. That is something that you would definitely have to upgrade if you go down the road and buy one of these bikes. So looking at all that, if you are a long time enduro rider, dual sport rider, and you're used to certain performance out of your bike and you're looking for a little bit more performance, these Chinese made bikes are probably not for you, right? I think where these have a really good spot in the market is for new riders, riders that are either on a limited budget or they not sure if they really want to ride off-road. This is a bike that's very easy to ride, and most of them are like that because they pretty much all come out of the same factories. So low power, it's not really going to get you in trouble. Suspension is on the softer side, so very comfortable, especially if you're a slower rider. You're not going to deal with a lot of problems there. And then you are able to go out, enjoy a bike that's relatively reliable on the engine side, and just ride, right? So you're not breaking the bank. A lot of the people that are new to the sport, they're very unsure about buying a used bike, because people are always like, well, you can just get a used DRZ Suzuki and you'll probably be at the same price, and you get a reliable bike. Yes, very true, but not everyone's able to kind of work on a used bike. So if you're able to buy one of these new, you have a good dealership that takes care of that bike, that can kind of set it up and make sure everything's tight, ready to go. You're able to go out there, get a feel for enduro riding, get a feel for dual sport riding, and really see if that's something you want to get into. Like I said, engine-wise, I don't see any major problems, especially for beginner riders. Small stuff like chains, bearings, stuff like that will definitely have to be upgraded at some point, but at that point where that becomes an issue, you're most likely at the point where you can decide, okay, I actually like this. I want a bike with a little bit more performance, with a little bit more of off-road ability, and then you just go back to your dealer, you trade this thing in, and you get yourself a proper enduro bike. And I think that can't be underestimated, right? There is a growing population of riders that want to go off-road. Not everyone's able to buy these, more expensive bikes, and this is where these come in very handy. So the CX brand is a motorcycle that's currently not available in North America, but GPX, they brought some dual sport bikes over here a couple years ago. They're available. Covey this year hitting the market with their new rally bike, and that's a very interesting looking bike. It has some good looking components. It is sort of advertised as a race bike, as a Dakar rally ready bike, so it will be very interesting to see how that performs once it's here, once it comes out. And there are a lot more manufacturers over there looking to build capable off-road ready bikes for this market. So I think over the next couple of years we will see more and more of these brands come out with product that is actually very capable of making it over here. So as long as they can keep their price points and just ramp up their quality a little bit, we will definitely see a couple more of these, and just have a couple more options, like I said, especially for new riders. So this gives you a pretty good idea of what you can expect from some of these dual sport bikes made in China. Like I said in some of my other reviews, I like motorcycles in general. I always think there is a place in the market for every single bike. So yes, if you jump on one of these and expect the performance of a KTM or a Husqvarna, a bike that costs more than twice as much, you'll definitely be disappointed. But for what these bikes cost, they're definitely fun to ride, and they have their purpose. I think looking at this debate about some of these bikes, it reminds me a lot of the debate with electric bikes, where most people have never ridden them, yet have a very strong opinion about these bikes. So yeah, let me know in the comments below if you've had a chance to ride one of them, what you think one of them, if you think we'll see more of them in the future. Very interested to hear what you guys are thinking, and we'll see you next week for another video.